What's up, guys? This is Living the Dream Podcast. I'm Sam, and today I've got a special guest that really segues from our social networking episode that we had here recently. We talked about social networking is not just social media, but this guy came straight from the social media side of it. I know I talk about LinkedIn a lot. I'm not sponsored by him. Wouldn't be mad if they would, but this guy was somebody that I found on LinkedIn, and I'd like to introduce to you guys Mr. Glen Hall. How are you doing today, Mr. Hall?
Meet you, Sam. Good to meet you. And we've never met in person, so this is us meeting as well.
Yes.
And yeah, that was LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a good tool. I do recommend it. Coach job seekers in the Tulsa area, and we recommend engaging on it. There's always different levels of how much people want to use social media, but we say find your comfort zone and wade in. It's good.
Well, absolutely. Well, and they have the educational tools and stuff that if you want to learn something new or learn a little more about what you're doing, LinkedIn has the options there as well with LinkedIn Learning.
They're very good about drawing you into the tool, and they hope you pay for the tool. Actually,
yeah,
we recommend the free version officially, and I do pay I do recruiting and I do pay, but that's because of what I do.
Right.
Not what most people. I'd say a free account is enough and can be leveraged very well.
Absolutely. So, Glen, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
So, yeah, I'm an independent recruiter. Coltech Consulting is my firm. I made up that name. Long story, but I had to have an LLC when I went to do independent contracting in 2002. I was in Michigan, Detroit area. I'm an automotive person. Had worked for Ernst & Young as a consultant to manufacturers, and they laid me off in 2002. That was my first of many layoffs, which we can delve into a whole nother thread. But so I created that name. Coltech is just Colossians, C-O-L, and tech, because I was doing some technical engineering stuff, needed a name. LLC was born, and when we moved to Michigan here to Oklahoma in 2008, kept the Coltech name, and now been doing recruitment under it for 12 years. I did have a couple of full-time jobs during COVID, pivoted quite a bit in COVID, doing contract staffing, some outplacement work, had 2 full-time jobs. That actually the last one ended in February this year. So
okay, I like the creation of the name. It's very good.
Yeah, it was just kind of when you need something, you just go do it, and you don't worry about. Had I known I was still going to be using it 23 years later, probably would have put a little more thought to it, but didn't.
Well, that's kind of like the Living the Dream podcast name. We just kind of we threw it out there and it stuck, and we were like, oh man, that's a great name. And then when we actually started trying to build the podcast and make it visible, we're like, oh, that was a terrible idea for the name because it's hard to find.
I mean, and most people do what I do, end up it's Glen Hall Associates or whatever, something off your name.
Right.
But oh well.
So I didn't realize that you were a private recruiter, that you you had your own firm. So that's
awesome. I was sort of drug into recruitment, kicking and screaming in 2008. I did so much job search because I knew I had working for an old friend in Detroit, knew I was going to lose my job 6 to 8 months before I was going to lose it.
That's almost worse. Instead of just like losing it immediately, but you've got that like 6 to 8 months of pressure to find it.
It was a gift, though. It was a gift. That guy's still almost a lifelong friend.
That's fantastic.
So the auto industry was in decline largely before the 2008 downturn. Again, I know I'm older, so that's not my first rodeo to go into a downturn. But I was like, oh, this is going to end. As I say about job seekers, I was a tall blade of grass, and I was going to get clipped probably. And so just needed to. And so we said, hey, my wife and I, wife's from Virginia Beach. That's where we lived for 5 years. We said, hey, we'd probably pick that area, but we also might pick between Virginia and Texas too. So I kind of, again, Michigan's not a bad place. Detroit's not a bad place. Don't believe the news. It's nice. It's very nice there. And career-wise, it would have been better for me to maybe stay centric to that area. But we said, hey, we got family in Tulsa. Let's try to make it work. And ultimately, Tulsa won out. and it's been great. I've got 3 boys, and they've basically been raised, near my parents and my brother and his family. It's been pretty cool. Um, Time you just can't get back because 2 of them are out of the house now, and we still have 1 in the house, and so it's a neat thing that's worked out. Although, if you told me about all the job changes and me doing recruitment, I would have laughed at you very loudly in '08.
Right.
And so I got asked to be a recruiter. I recruited to be a recruiter because I was just good at interacting with recruiters. I was just a good candidate,
Gotcha.
but whatever. And so ultimately had some roles, worked for smaller private equity owned companies in Tulsa. First one was making heat exchangers in West Tulsa, TAT Technologies. And then later, what was then Gunnybo Johnson. It's now owned by an entity called Keto Crosby, and it's about to be sold into Columbus McKinnon. That was in North Tulsa. And so got restructured out of both of those 2 different times. And by 2013, I was like, I could interview for these jobs. There were jobs. It's just, how about I just fill that job for you? And just, I got more comfortable in the dark forest between jobs than actually taking a job.
I gotcha.
As we say as a recruiter, and got more comfortable with having 20 client bosses instead of 1.
Gotcha.
And fortunately, 2013 to 14, if you were working then, or if you weren't, it was a very good time in manufacturing in Northeast Oklahoma. So I did time it good. Defense was good. Oil was still strong. Oil-related manufacturing. I'm talking about capital equipment. So it was kind of a good time to sort of branch out. And I did it just in time because in 2015, oil dipped, 2016, oil dipped. So you had some dips, and that would directly affect my local work. So here we are. And again, I come out of the engineering operations side of things, worked at Ford for a number of years and just various manufacturing entities. And so bring a little different view into the recruitment world because I usually either hired or did the jobs I recruit for. And so I can offer clients a little different perspective in that regard.
Well, and I think that, honestly, I think the first time that you and I connected was you had either sponsored a link that you were looking for CNC machinist, or I got connected through you with.
I was probably talking to anybody that even you can spell. You know what CNC is? I probably want to talk to you in Oklahoma, especially with programmers, because I've worked on roles like that and CMM programmers,
Right.
2 different things,
Yes.
very unique, very needed. And I've had clients that have struggled with that going back over a year now, probably a year and 3 or 4 months.
Well, and that's one of the things that we do like trying to talk about on here is some of the struggles that are in the industry. Trying to show people that it's not always somebody on a shovel or in an excavator or covered in grease and oil. Like, there's plenty of blue collar opportunities out there that can place you behind a desk or in an air conditioned environment.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
it's not all grit and grime. There is some fluff to the stuff.
Yeah, I think it's even better now in some ways to go into a blue collar trade because, as I say again, I'm old enough. I'm not a digital native. I didn't grow up with this, but if you did, you're automatically technically savvy because you can do all the technology piece that used to be quote office jobs only.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I'm like, what do you want to do is really the question.
Right.
More than what can you do. It's more what do you want to do, because you can take your technology skills as far as you want, or maybe you're not a technology person. You're more hands-on with that, but you know how to use the tools and use the real tools with your hands and the electronic tools to help you. It's a very, very powerful opportunity in the market. And whether that's more education you go into or it's just learn on the job, there's opportunity.
Absolutely. So, you've so you moved into the consulting aspect of it. Where do your roots go? Because you said that you have some engineering background and
Yeah, we talk about in manufacturing. Everyone grew up somewhere, right?
Right.
And so professionally, I grew up as an engineer. I was a new grad, Ford college graduate, as you say, that they would put through product engineering rotations. I worked in a truck division back in the day. Again, this is a long time ago, but and then I came off the program and went to work I was a development engineer actually initially. So I grew up in engineering, but then I quickly found, you know what? I like the plant. I want to work in manufacturing. So I tried to position myself to get on what we call it in the auto industry, a launch, a new model launch. And I wanted to some people hate that stuff and never go. I was like, I want to go to the plant. So I volunteered for, at the time, the F-150 was going through its first major change in more than 20 years.
Wow.
This is the late 90s. You might remember the 1997 F-150 begin. I know that's an old vehicle now, but it was very
my favorite body style, by the way.
Yeah, okay. So you like the 97?
Yes, 97, 98, the rounded.
And it was very different then.
Yes.
It was not very. It was popular, but you grow on people.
Yeah.
And anyway, it became a great thing for Ford once they launched it. But I want to go to the plant and just see how the product was built. And, and I fell in love with that, helping the plant team build the product better. And it's hard. I spent 4 or 5 months in Norfolk, Virginia. I spent 9 to 12 months in Kansas City. I spent 6 to 8 months in Toronto, Ontario at a Ford plant. Then 6 more months back in Michigan. And by the time I was done with all that, I had found a wife and, went to launch and got married. That's not uncommon in the auto industry. I've got some friends that have Mexican wives. They go to Mexico, end up married, whatever. That's fine. And so we decided we were going to get married, and one of us had to move because she was in Virginia. I'm based in Michigan, but I hadn't been there in 3 years. And so I decided I asked Ford to put me at the plant. They didn't want to let me move. And I said, you know what? I think I'm done. And I look back, I'm a very impatient 28-year-old.
As most are.
Completely. Yes, 100%. And thought I knew enough. Okay. In reality, and again, I just never looked back and went to work for a tier 1 auto supplier making headlamps. We were molding, assembly operation 24/7. Ended up running maintenance there, so had kind of a more of a career path, getting promoted into some higher level roles.
So just to back up just a little bit, now you said that you went to you said Ford College?
Ford College Graduate Program. It was just a training program that they would put new grad engineers. So Ford didn't hire anybody in the 80s. I was a 1989 college graduate, and they had not hired anybody. They'd only started rehiring in 87 and 88. They'd stopped hiring in 81 because the company nearly died or nearly went under in 81.
Right. History
lesson. It was a bad economic time. I barely remember it because I was 14 back then.
Well, that was when. So that was back whenever I believe it was the CEO at that point in time. And I'm a Ford nut. Okay, so I'm a Ford fan. So I believe at that point in time is when the CEO of Ford did probably one of the biggest things in order to avoid any kind of a government bailout. Was he stepped aside and allowed Ford to restructure from the top down.
Well, that's Alan Mullally. That's later.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I apologize.
Yeah, that's later. That's 06.
Okay.
06. This is like 1989. I'm going to work, and they hired like 400 engineers that year. And I just still remember this because I still text with some of my old friends. They're all retired. If I'd stayed at Ford, I'd be retired. Yeah. But because I was on a defined pension and I left it. So please shoot me. But then again, life goes on, right? You make decisions and you move through it.
Right. This is one of those the union benefits aspects of it that we've talked about on some of the podcasts previously.
As a salary employee, I benefited greatly from the strength of the union at the UAW level of a major automaker, and so I remember that the Ford CEO at that time was Don Peterson. Look him up. He retired in like 90. He looks around at 400 new grads and he goes, I remember when we promoted the first chief engineer at Ford who actually had a degree, and every one of you now has a degree. Like, meaning it had evolved, right? Like, wait a minute. And so that goes back, that's a long history of degree, no degree, can people do the job, whatever. but he acknowledged that, and that always stuck with me because at that point I'm like sort of in the pipeline of get the degree and get the job and whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and
and there's
that's a
very
good
much a
segue
big,
to I hope to have a
yeah,
future guest of Ken Rusk, um, um, somebody that Scott Townsend had turned me on to, that he does the Blue Collar Cash book, which I'm currently reading and am enthralled. And I hate reading, so the fact that he's grabbed my attention with this book is great. But
nice.
it is about the, the blue collar aspect. Everybody's, again, it's really in line with what we're trying to do with the podcast. Is, it's not, you can't look at it as it's just hard work. This is an opportunity to be a debt-free career and do whatever you want with your life. So
100%, man.
you don't
It's
have to have a degree. You can get a degree.
no, you don't. You do not have to. Just come work for us, and we will make you what we need.
Exactly. So, okay, so
It's
you're at Ford.
yeah,
You got to the deal so where they were like, we don't want you to leave, but you're like,
yeah. Well, and I was impatient. One of us, my wife, could have transferred her job at the time up to Detroit area, and I said, but we really like Virginia. We like the beach. My wife still loves the beach. She misses the beach here. But anyway, and I quit. And again, I went to work for an auto supplier, and that's kind of like jumping off. It's a very different world.
oh, absolutely,
And it's suddenly I learned, oh, Ford's got all these systems, and I had all this help. And when I pick up the phone and say I worked on the F-150, everybody answered the phone and actually, call me back. Now I'm a supplier, and I just get beat on. And so
right?
I had to learn a lot, but I became very good at delivering value for my OEM clients. Uh, just doing more launches, and I worked on the Dodge Ram headlamp. I ended up, I immediately started going to Mexico all the time because at the time, before NAFTA was signed, and you might, if again, I'll just say it for you. Ross Perot, he's a Texas guy, was running as an independent in '92 presidential election. He said, if that gets signed, you're going to hear a giant sucking sound in Mexico. And I remember laughing about that. And I don't have any, and again, I won't talk about politics, but it's like that guy was 100% right because I lived it.
Right.
I was in a plant making parts, and every auto supplier basically put plants in Mexico in the '90s. And again, there were some OEMs already building down there. It was happening. Ford, GM, Chrysler have all been building there for 70, 80 years.
Right.
But it got accelerated by that legislation. And now, so this is 30 years later, right? We're 31 years from that. We're like one entity. If you're in the auto industry, it's been one region for Canada, US, Mexico, one region forever.
Right.
But there has been a push. And so I got just thrown into all of that too. And that's another push is learn another language if you can.
Yeah.
You of any kind. And again, I know we're sitting in Oklahoma. That's not as big of a deal sometimes. But man, every business we touch in manufacturing, I routinely have 50-person business clients who send half their work out of this country.
Well, and even if you're even in like in the maintenance realm with myself, I'm primarily focused on CNCs is where my niche is in the maintenance market, but I've dealt with machines from Germany, I've dealt with machines from France,
Exactly.
I've dealt with machines from Italy. There is, and I spent 3 months with two French speaking natives that had no English whatsoever, and I
Oh
communicated
wow.
through Google Translate for 3
Because
months.
usually usually their language skills are better than ours.
Yep. Well, these were older gentlemen, and one of them actually, as soon as he finished the project, it was his last project before he retired, and
Oh my goodness.
so he finished it and then disappeared, and we so then it was trying to get with somebody else to
Well, that's brutal.
to figure out the coding and how he had set up the sub programs later on down the road. So that was a whole other fiasco. But yeah,
I
no,
can
I'm
imagine Google Translate being powerful now.
oh, it's amazing. I was able to have full on conversations with them,
That's so awesome.
and
I used it a little bit my last big trips. I did a project in Mexico in 2018. I was down there for 8 weeks. Instead of staffing it, I became the 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 talent. I went down there and ran a launch for an old friend,
Fantastic.
and I was using Google Translate. I'm going, oh, I wish I'd had this in the 90s.
Well, I know. Yeah. Well, and now I
Well,
think
I've
they've
been,
got the AirPods that you can set it up to where it will automatically translate it through the
yeah,
AirPods.
yeah, I've heard that. And I'm like, oh, that would just
Oh,
be,
it's game changing.
yeah. I've been in warehouses in Mexico trying to count parts, and the guy I'm communicating with, he could count to 10 in English, and I could count to 10 in Spanish, and that's how we had to sort everything out. And I had to give him direction for 8 hours for sorting 10,000 headlamps. And I remember going, why did I, again, you ought to look back at yourself and go, I was an idiot. Why didn't I just learn some basic? I had opportunities. I just didn't learn it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, learn another language. I've tried to get my boys to do that, but in America, it's so easy. We're English, and the world kind of caters to you somewhat, even if you go outside the U.S. You're just like, man.
Well, and it's so funny
It's
because
too easy.
it seems like a lot of the countries they're required to learn English. So
Oh,
when you go to their country, then they're excited to be able to speak English to you, and it's just it's not a even trade off.
we can do so much better as a country. We need to
Yeah.
push it.
I,
So
I made fun of
internally,
my sister for taking 4 years of French in high school, and then there I was stuck face to face with two
yeah,
Frenchmen for 3 months. And I texted her and I said, I apologize for making fun of you in high school.
yeah, exactly. We're just ignorant, and not again. It's funny, but yeah, the tools do help. That's amazing.
Yep. So, all right. So you've left Ford. You're working for the headlamp. You travel back and forth to Mexico. You said that
And again, I was just doing launches. I started to get promoted. I ran a maintenance, ended up running a facility maintenance team,
okay.
which was kind of interesting. I had to learn this HVAC, this is the hydraulics, this is the mechanical, electrical. Then I'm doing $8 million plant expansion, capital projects. Going, wait a minute. Yeah, studied a lot of I was ag engineering by degree and had a lot of mechanical engineering classes. But I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know anything about what that water line is going to do when we put a 8-inch water line across the plant and go, is that going to collapse the roof or what? Again, let's call it. That job became more about I know nothing. How do I ask the questions to get to the right person with the answer?
Right. Right.
And again, we had a lot of certifications and compliance that my team had to uh, support. And my biggest thing was coaching them through, if the line's not running, we're not making money and they can't pay our salaries. As I say in leadership in a plant, there's just two people at work today. There's people who make parts and people who support people who make parts. If you do not understand which one you are, we'll talk.
There you go. That's great. I love that. I'm actually I'm gonna mark that clip because that's great. That's great information right there.
It's a cliche, but it's like, hey
But it's
man,
true
who
though.
are who are you? Who are you? Because all these people are paying your salaries.
But yeah, no, I always joke about the maintenance aspect of it. It's like, yeah, we may be overhead, but somebody's got to turn the lights off at the end of the day. So if the plant shuts
Yeah.
down, we'll be the last ones here.
Well, yeah, like we say about maintenance. Yeah, all you gotta do is drill a hole. Okay, great. I'll drill the hole. Where?
Right.
And that's like it's $1 to drill the hole. It's 9,999 to know where.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Again, all these knowledge things that and it's very again coaching those guys, man, building their trust. I was pretty good at that in the plant, but there's some things I just couldn't evaluate, right? Like I had never done HVAC or journeyman electrical or deep hydraulic fixes or whatever. Again, but I could very much judge the outcomes, and that's what it became. And I tried to be fair with those guys. And but even back then in that job, I remember getting asked some trigonometry stuff because one of our journeyman machinists in the back was like, he just was checking something because he was making some specialized fixture and he only had so much material and he didn't want to mess it up. He goes, "Hey, come here." And he didn't know me, but he goes, "You have an engineering background?" Yeah. He goes, "You know trig?" I go, well,
I can spell it.
don't put me on the spot, but I might get there. Again, we don't have a phone, right? So I'm
Yeah.
like, this is really live ammo type time. Well, I helped him a little bit, and he again, that's where I started to go, man. The basic math though. Man, my mom's a math teacher. Like, when are we going to use all this stuff? But the trig, some of the understanding of some of the basics, so powerful because at the end of the day, it's physics. It's moving metal. You're doing hard things with very sophisticated tools.
The whole math aspect of it, that was one of the things that I excelled at, because I went to school as a I started off mechanical engineering, moved towards the manufacturing engineering side of it. And then, like, much like you, decided I hated being in the office. I wanted to be on the shop floor, and I wanted to work with the people on the shop floor, and then ended up moving into a machinist
Yeah.
position for 12
So
years.
you're a good example. Like, how many hours did you complete? So you got a lot of the math out of the
Well,
way.
yeah, no, I'm 2 classes shy of having a bachelor's in manufacturing engineering, but I just
Wow. So you're practically there.
yeah, and so I had all of the math and you said the trigonometry, and that's kind of like my trigger word. I struggled. That was the one math class that I think I got a C in,
Yeah.
and but everything else, the alphabet soup, I was fine at. But
Wow. But that's just good. It's good background. Again, not that we're going to all pull out Chat GPT now or whatever, but you still knowing the concepts enable you to think critically and then back into a solving of a problem. So that's good. Not that school matters for everything, but the math is just helpful. Even
well, and you'll have
if you say I didn't finish it, so what? What did you do? 10, 15 hours. So I coach job seekers a lot sometimes around, don't talk about what you didn't do, but talk about what you did complete.
right. Well, I had a professor, Michael Feigert. He was retired from Boeing. It was probably one of the biggest impacts in my growing. And he told me, he goes, listen, here, everything that we're teaching you here, you don't have to memorize it. It's not required for you to ingrain all of this knowledge into your head. All we're trying to do is give you the tools to be able to go find the information later on down the road, because you're not going to remember this stuff 15 years
Yeah,
from now.
that's so powerful, because we were trying to memorize formulas back in the day. I did high school and college without a calculator. It's like, really?
Yeah. Well, and he's like,
I actually have a calculator in my pocket now.
there's books, there's references, and now the internet has
Yeah.
blown up to so big that you can find all of this stuff later on down the road just by typing it into your phone. So it's not so much now memorizing
No,
it,
that's
but
so true.
being able to apply those concepts.
So that's the critical thinking piece, is like, when do I apply XYZ type rules, or when do I apply, what do I stick into the tool? Because we talk about trash in, trash out. You've got this supercomputer in your hand now. Doesn't help if you don't know what to put in or what questions to ask. So asking the right questions becomes the art. And again, that's back to, sometimes you just have to have experience to ask those questions.
Right. Well, and like I'm sure that a lot of your career leading up to where you are now has helped you to be able to communicate with the variety of different people that I'm sure come to
Yeah.
you looking for a job. You say that you've
Yeah.
worked as director of maintenance. That's a huge task, because it's especially for a
Yeah, it's
facilities
crazy hard.
director, is you've literally got everything from the crack of dawn to a broken heart that you have to try and fix. And
Oh yeah. I mean, the grass will be growing up, and we got weeds in the yard, and I'm like, I got the corporate team coming, and I call my guy. I go, hey, aren't you showing up? He goes, man, y'all haven't given me a check. And I'd have to remind him. I said, I fully understand that you're not going to show up until we pay you, but I told you we have this corporate 60-day requirement,
right.
and I go, I have to circumvent it to pay you in 10 days or whatever we'd agreed on, because your mowing guy doesn't show up unless he gets paid.
Right.
Very fair, but I said, we'll call him Larry. Call me, because I have to remember to do that.
Right.
He goes, oh, all right.
You're just one of about 50 people that I have to interact with and coax
But
every day.
it was one of those where I remember working with that guy, and I'm just going, now he's smart. He's not going to work unless he gets paid. And I'm like, there you go. The basics of
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
Absolutely. So you moved from the director of maintenance, and where did you
Yeah,
move
so
from?
I had a couple of jobs like that, and then Ernst and Young recruited me back. Now they're a consulting firm, but I kind of went from what I call the back end of the process in automotive, launching products, getting the plants working, to the front end of the process with Ernst and Young, helping tier one suppliers figure out product development systems to try to do more with less. And so when we say that, we were trying to develop a software tool that could take their the basically scarce resource of engineers who didn't know, and they didn't have enough engineers to engineer the parts that they wanted to build for clients. In this case, it was a German auto supplier working with BMW, Mercedes, Porsche, and they were also working with Ford. And they're like, hey, if we get the software tool, we can do like 3 of those programs with 30 engineers instead of 2. And so that was the idea. So we were connecting. It was crazy. We were using MATLAB, which is a modern tool even now. It's old. It was new then. It's old now, but and we connected it to CAD systems to build CAD models that were based on design rules of chassis parts, and you could build them in 3 minutes instead of like 3 or 4 weeks.
Wow.
That was the idea. Sounds cool. Did it ever really get implemented? In theory, it was a little ahead of its time because the parametric nature of product engineering has been very much powerful now. And now, of course, AI is even driving that harder.
Right.
But it's basically the automatic creation of the CAD models, which then, as you would know in CNC, now we have software tools that will break that down and tell the equipment how to build the part
Hmm.
without a lot of human programming or interaction. Or if it's not, there is human interaction. It's just the human gets a much better starting point.
Well, yeah. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it, and a lot of the the scrutinizing over the details. It can do some of the big chunk things, and then you just have to go back and refine it later to it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what this tool was doing. And again, it was a little ahead of its time. This is more than 20 years ago. But again, I got into that consulting firm after Y2K. Things kind of blew up around and in Y2K, all that was everyone thinking that a 2-digit year
Going to
in a
zero.
software package mattered.
Yeah. It
Turns out it didn't matter a
yeah,
bit.
it's so funny to look back on that.
It was the
It is.
biggest do about nothing with all these old school ERP systems. I don't say old, I mean like AS400 mainframe based systems versus the internet based systems. Anyway, so all that work blew up, and then I was out of Ernst and Young by 2002, and I went to work for my largest client, which was a German auto supplier. And so I'm kind of back launching programs and spending a bunch of time. In this case, though, I was kind of running the program as the general manager, and it was brutal. And so by '08, you know, I have little kids by then. It's not as fun working launch out of town traveling when you got little kids at home.
Yeah.
I spent a year in Chicago. Uh, it was terrible on my wife. It wasn't so bad for me, although it was pretty hard work because I went from being a Ford employee to having Ford as my only customer, and it was hard.
Yeah. High
Um, but
expectations.
anyways, yeah. So again, by then, though, my brother's here in Tulsa, and by '08, I had a different job where I was working on shock absorbers, and I actually had multi-country responsibility, and I had a distribution center here in Chickasha, Oklahoma, and I was in Mexico, I was in East Tennessee, I was in south of France, and I was in Toronto, and so that also it was funny. You get promoted, and you're thinking, oh, it's awesome, and then you're like, this isn't really that much more fun than when I was just doing launches with one site with one team every day.
Yeah.
I found for me it was just sounds cool, but it was a little bit overblown. And so, but again, my business unit was blew up. And so anyway, by '08, I knew I needed to make a change, and we kind of said we're going to pick the life in Tulsa and bend the career around the life. I went to work for small, privately held PE owned companies. And there's a lot of volatility in some of those companies. And so I went through some change in 11 and 2013. And by then I was like, you know what? I got some consulting work immediately. because I was better at transitioning jobs by then. I was a whole lot better in 13 than I was in 2002. You learn to change jobs when you have to do it. The pain of change gets less once you go through it a lot. And so I started doing some consulting work, and then I started filling jobs I got asked to interview for, and that kind of grew what became my full-time recruitment work.
Right on. Fantastic.
And that ran really well. I won't say well. It was up and down. Like when oil went down in 16, I had a rough year. Had another rough year when oil was back down in 19. But then COVID just stopped my world. And so
COVID stopped everybody's world, honestly.
yeah, I can tell you the day the state shut down because I lost like an 18, 20 grand placement. I was like, whoa, and never got it back. But 3 weeks in, I started calling electric vehicle companies because by then electric vehicles were huge. I had all these friends on the West Coast and in Detroit. I'm living here in Tulsa. I'm like, hey, if I can work remote and do this all day, I'll just either fly to LA or I'll fly to Detroit or I'll sit here on Zoom in Tulsa. And so that again, we were doing video calls for a long time in the auto industry with all the different locations. It's just the connectivity was terrible in the 90s, right? So it wasn't much different in what we were doing. It's just COVID sort of forced that on everybody, including our kids in school and whatever. But so I finally landed at Canoe, who came here to Tulsa or came here to Oklahoma. That was a fun 2-year run, but that thing was one of many electric vehicle companies that were not going to make it. And then most recently I worked at Tenneco Automotive. So kind of 2 jobs sort of back in my old world. But at the same time, I kept recruitment going as a side gig because clients, the small clients I met here, completely unrelated to the auto industry. They are in manufacturing, but very unrelated. And so they would just call me and I still would help them. I would also get some local help from a recruiter I know and trust, and kept it going as a side gig. So it became my side gig for almost 3 years.
Wow.
But now it's become more full-time since March of this year. And I like it. You know, the key is just keeping it going. The challenge of being independently employed now, though, is carrying the benefits.
Yeah.
And my wife's job is now able to carry our family benefits. So that's a blessing because I don't have to worry about that. That became, again, I've been on independent benefits since '02. So I can tell you lots of stories,
Wow.
but I'm not a fan of carrying your benefits on your own in this stage, and, or even in this country. It's terrible.
I'm sure it's hard even being on company owned benefits that they
Well, and that's
supply.
changed tremendously,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It's unbelievable.
transitioned in the 8 years that I've been employed with my company. The benefits have changed so dramatically.
Oh yeah, and companies are everyone's up against it. So healthcare is a whole nother podcast and a whole nother audience. But goodness,
Yeah.
But
So,
I feel blessed to be able to do this independently, and I do a lot of volunteering with job seekers. But I find myself becoming this advocate for blue collar jobs or jobs that don't require a degree, but we need you in our sector.
absolutely.
And I talk about that all the time with whoever, and my kids and their friends are sick of me talking about it. But it's amazing. The opportunities are out there.
Absolutely. So I would ask, with you being in the recruitment aspect of it, how often do you say would be like, do you target like blue collar jobs, or is it just kind of one of those whatever they give
Yes,
you?
good question. I got thrown into it in COVID because what's the first thing that you don't do in COVID? You stopped hiring. You're trying to keep people in the door, and then of course they started doing layoffs. Well, but as it came back, if you look at late 20, early 21, people are like, well, I'll bring in contract help. And so I pivoted to contract to hire staffing, different model than direct hire recruiting.
Yeah.
And so I all of a sudden, hey man, I had friends who were in hiring positions. They're like, if you can staff this, Glenn, we'll put you on as a third party staffing company. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And I had to go get workman's comp. I had to run payroll myself. I did everything myself.
Wow.
I had up to 25 people out on on my payroll at clients at one point in 21 and 22. I think it was maybe peaked at 25 or 30. So I would run payroll every Friday. I had my dad helping me run checks, whatever. I'm just doing whatever. And so those were all entry level hourly roles. A lot of them were in machining as machine operators, screw machine operators. At one point, we did some assembly. I had like an assembly team that needed to be the client for like 12 people, like for 12 weeks. What was interesting, though, and as you can imagine, those jobs went up $4 or $5 an hour instantly during COVID, and they stayed there even after the government extra payout for unemployment stopped. And so those jobs that I call them 12 to 15 an hour before COVID or 16 to 18 after COVID and have never gone back down.
Yeah.
So that was one aspect. So it's funny. I was trying everybody. Like, hey, man. And again, a lot of them my sons were in college. Well, they just started college then. So I'm hitting up all their friends. If their friends didn't go to college or they weren't enrolled in a class, if they could even work part-time for me, I'm calling them.
Right. Can you spell wrench? Hey, I got a job for you.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. And again, the clients were very good. Like Glen, if I show up, they, pass a drug screen, pass a background. In some cases, we were officially background friendly. At one point, I had 2 homeless people working on our payroll. We tried lots of things to keep things running.
Yeah. So
and we found people, and it was hard.
So would you say that the availability of blue collar jobs right now is pretty much, and I think, and I can't remember if this was prior to us starting to record or if it was in our recording here, but would you say that it's not a matter of you have to know what you want to do, you can just figure it out as you go, like just show up and we'll teach you?
Right, very much. I still believe that's true. Again, we've got less jobs posted in the world of openings, but there's a lot of aspect of, if you can just get into a place, we'll train you to be a machinist, we'll train you to be a welder. And in companies that have high demand, they have, again, we don't have an apprentice system like Germany, but I've put in 2 of them, or I've worked with senior employees to create them. Every time I would hear a 40-year machinist or a welder who was on my team tell me, Glen, if you can just get a person in here who will show up every day and listen and be here all the time, we'll make them into a machinist. We'll make them into a welder.
Yeah. And
or if they've got a little bit of experience, we'll take that experience and leverage it. One of the best hires I ever made, I used to run. I got a right knee problem now. I don't run, but I used to meet a running group every Tuesday night, and I'm older, I'm slower. Well, this young guy would always take off, gone. And I didn't know much about him. Well, the running store owner goes, Glen, he's a welder. I go, what? He's a welder? I had that young man working for me in 10 days. It was done. To this day, that 40-year-old shop manager would say, Glen, that's one of the best hires you ever found. And I said, yeah. Well, again, it turns out he's a great employee. I've placed him in a management job since then. That was 10 years ago.
Wow.
Now he's got a family. He runs weld shops as a manager. Never went to college. His wife's a teacher, but he's the breadwinner.
There you go.
Whatever. Yeah, it's again, great hire. But you're just like, that was just from me learning, because I heard that a person I knew about welding. I once hired a welder that my wife met in the line at Bed Bath & Beyond.
That's so great. Again, I'm gonna plug we'll drop it up here on the top, the networking episode. It's not just social media, because I literally had that scenario in the episode.
Yeah, I hired this guy. He was a refugee here, legal, all that, and I hired him because it turns out he'd weld stainless steel back in his home country.
It's fantastic.
You can weld stainless steel. You can weld dang near anything we need in Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
And even some of those aerospace materials, you're over in aerospace. And again, that was my I was deep in aerospace earlier, and so very interesting. But and at one point I had 10 people or 12 people that used to work for me at one company moonlighting at my new company as welders because that company, the aerospace company, had lost some work and they were just down to they were just working straight time, and I was blowing up over there at the oil field equipment place, lifting place, and I'm like, well, if you can do this, you're in. And they were I said, give me all the hours you can, and they got us through a tough spot. So it's those relationships, you just never
Well,
know.
yeah, no, and it's the networking aspect of it, just talking to people in line, talking to people that there's freaking lines everywhere you go anymore. So, just strike up a conversation.
Or being on, active on a LinkedIn. I tell everybody get on LinkedIn, but get in with your be yourself. Don't be someone you're not.
Yeah.
But have an account. Like if you have an account in CNC programming, I probably have hit you up within 500 miles of Tulsa.
Yeah.
Or I need
There
to.
you go.
And you can, but it's hard because all of my hires in 21 and 22 hourly, they weren't found on Facebook or LinkedIn. They were all word of mouth. At the time, my Facebook page, my work Facebook page, would let me post jobs for free. They stopped that in 2022
Really?
or 2023. Yeah, I was sometimes would have luck with that, and I would make posts on, say, the job boards or whatever. But I'm telling you, it was mostly referral.
Yeah.
And I've tracked it, right? If you go back 12 years of recruiting, there's three buckets, right? There's blind applicants, there's people who have been referred to us, and then there's people we go find. Those buckets have always kind of been even for me. But I can tell you the last couple of years, it's almost all referrals.
Yeah.
So get connected. But again, you have to, we want in manufacturing, we want you to want to be here. So if you're show a little faint of heart because it's a little hot or whatever, that just doesn't, it's just not going to ultimately work out, maybe. And so,
well, and sometimes you've got to go through the rough stuff to get to where you want to be. Not every.
that's the point. Like, see if you like
Yeah.
it, and again, there are shops that are completely air conditioned, like the heat exchanger place I was at. It was not, it was welding in air conditioning and not out of position, meaning it was more tabletop, like literally on my desk here.
Right.
That's it. And again, some of these things are big. It wasn't like your 6 positions like some of these large heat exchangers or just crazy. As I say, if it's made in Tulsa, it's usually large and odd shaped and welded.
Yeah.
That's a really cool thing, but that's also not for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. It's physically demanding and it is uncomfortable a lot of times.
But you see some of the hourly rates on some of those.
It's astonishing, honestly.
It is stunning. Those are all 6-figure jobs.
Yeah. Well, I grew up. My dad, my grandfather, my great grandfather were all union pipe fitter welders, and I have the capability, but have never refined it. Like we had talked about. Your father figured out that you could weld, and then all of a sudden you were real busy on the farm, and
Yeah.
so
I had no idea he needed me so bad on that skill.
But it's one of those deals that I look back on it and I'm like, man, was that a path that I should have went down? I probably could be making a lot more money, but I'd probably also be in a lot worse physical condition, because looking at my dad, where he's at and where my grandfather was at, both of them, their bodies are pretty worn out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about that. And again, I would even say, because as a farm, I was a farm kid. I was really like a technician for hire all through high school. And I remember, talking to one of my best friends. He's like, we need a job where it's warm in the winter and cool in the summer. That's all we care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you look back 45 years later, we have that kind of job. And so, but my kids think this is easy, right? I do work remote. I have to kind of go create the connection like this or go to the client. But, I spent a long time in a lot of plants to earn that opportunity.
Right. Get the know-how
And
and get the skill set.
it's hard, at least, so I can walk into a place and understand it, or at least ask the right questions and know what I don't understand.
Right.
Um, it's really unique. Tulsa's really unique in that regard because it's a lot more here than you think in terms of manufacturing. There's a lot more here than you think in terms of just the engineering know-how of some of these smaller businesses that are very niche and solve a lot of really cool problems.
Definitely. Well, Glenn, it has. I think we've got some pretty good content here. Where can they reach out and find you at?
Um, LinkedIn's great. Glen Hall, and I'm in Tulsa. It's easy to find. Or coltecconsulting.com. COLTEC consulting.com.
Fantastic. Well, Glenn, I really appreciate your time here, and
You're welcome.
it was a pleasure talking with you. And we're gonna have to sit down and maybe have lunch one of these days. And
Yeah, we'll do that since you're not too far away.
Yeah.
We can
make something
work.
happen for sure.
Absolutely.
So this has been Living the Dream podcast. I'm Sam, and we'll see y'all next week. If you're late, you're lost.